holding an impromptu live stream for Halloween, and also because it's the last day of Inktober. And when I did a poll last, I guess Saturday, asking if people wanted to draw the Hobbit house or the storybook cottage, the Hobbit house was such a close second that I thought it would be a fun way to see out Inktober by doing the final drawing live. So I've already done a preliminary sketch, and I've discussed in the last live stream some tips about how I did that, using a method called site size and using this academic divider. So if you're interested, you can check that out and see how I did it. I'm going to try to be a little bit quicker today, so I will be trying to draw a bit more quickly. The last live stream was way too long. I was too chatty and too immersed in teaching. So the first thing that I want to do is to erase this line, which I used as part of the method for drawing the site size. And again, any information about that you can find on the live stream that I did yesterday, which is the live stream for the Storybook Cottage. All right, so the first thing that I always do, if you've been here before, you know, is, oh, hi, AJ. Nice to see you. Long time no see. So the first thing that I normally do is I go in with my ink and just try to account for all of the lines that I put in pencil first, because they will smudge and they'll disappear, especially as this is rough watercolor paper. So let's get started with that, and then we'll go in and add texture and hopefully have a lot of fun with this one. So I'm going to start with the round parts, because that's probably the trickiest bit of this. I mean, I can see that there are a few different pieces of wood that were cut into curves or milled into curves. I don't know how they would do it. And I'm doing all of this freehand, as I did with the drawing, just because that I like to live dangerously. Although I did sort of pre-measure or predetermine where some of the main points of this circle were going to be. And again, I discussed that one on yesterday's live stream. There are going to be some darker shadows around here. AJ taking your notes, yeah. I gave quite a long explanation for the site size method yesterday, and so I'm going to try to not repeat myself. There's a lot of good content there, and if anybody's interested watching this on a replay, I'm happy to do a longer content video about drawing site size, or even a shorter content one at some date in the future. So let me know if that's the kind of thing that interests you, anybody. And another thing about site size is that it's the traditional method. I'm sorry, I'm just thinking, I can't remember if I made this door. I think the door is the correct size, but I didn't account for these planks of wood, so I can check it though. I'll show you how. Little sneak peek. So this, for the site size method, I basically went into my editing and found that on my iPad, it was a very similar size to the postcard, so I could measure out key points. Yeah, exactly as I thought. So this will be the edge of the door. I'm leaving room for some of the vines that are growing over it. Same up here. You'll be watching it. Great, AJ. Yeah, it was, I'm warning you, it was long. Feel free to skip over any parts. And All right, so I'm just freehanding the edge of these boards like that, and then I'll do the shading and everything later. Although I might go in with some of the dark lines right away and put those in. So AJ or anybody else who's joining, if you're just drawing this fresh right now, I would recommend kind of citing where you want things to be, and I'd start around here and work your way out. I think that's the best way to do it. That's how I did it. Basically, I figured out where this was going to be placed in my composition. And once you do that, I mean, that's sort of the main focal point, that and this little table. And yeah, I want to make some of these darker right away because there's a lot of shading underneath. So I might as well go in with it right away. One thing I always talk about is the light source, and to find out where the light source is, you look for where your main shadows are. And it's difficult to tell in this picture, but I'm going to look over here for some shadows, and I'm going to look at the door, basically anything that would cast a shadow. So I'm looking for clues. And I think this is the biggest clue. Can you see how obviously this little piece of the wood is casting some shadows down below, but the shadows seem to be a little bit heavier over here and here. So I think my guess is that the light is going to be coming from overhead and in this direction. So I'm going to, if that's the case, that's why these shadows aren't as well defined, because I think this part that we're drawing is a little bit backlit, meaning that it's getting refracted light from all of these other items, but the sun probably is behind this slope, if that makes sense. Now this board's really lovely because it's a bit characterful, and it's a little bit crooked. So I want to put that in like that. There we go. And put in these little milled pieces. I can't tell if that's a curtain behind there. I think it is. But again, it doesn't matter what something is, it just matters how your eye perceives it. So it's better to not get too caught up in naming things. And this doorknob is really interesting. It's like the shape of a star. It's in the center. Let's zoom in on that. Oh, it's hard to tell if it's round. There's a bit of a star shape there, and there, but I feel like that might be behind the doorknob and that the doorknob might be round. In any case, I'm gonna draw the doorknob just to be a bit like this shape. And I'm gonna put that design in, even though the design is in white, I'm going to put it in darker. When I go to the watercolor stage next month, which starts tomorrow, I may decide to just do that with white ink, but for the purpose of this working as a standalone drawing as well, we'll put it in dark. All right. So this was a little surprise, unplanned live stream. I hinted that I might do it to a few people, and yesterday on the live, I know Javier was here and he was really interested. A lot of people wanted me to draw the Hobbit house. And I went to bed Saturday night looking at all of the polls, and thinking the Hobbit house definitely was going to win it. And then I woke up and Storybook Cottage had raced ahead. All right, I did not pencil in these wood plank lines, so I'm being, I don't know, not brave, cowardly. I'm gonna just put them in with a pencil before I go in with ink, just to be sure I place them. I mean, this is a focal point, so this is a really important feature, and I want to make sure I get it right. But they're very faint, so I'm gonna be really getting my camera ready. I want to film this for my other channels. That's that squeaky noise is my little tripod. Okay, I'm ready to go. I think that's good. That's about. And again, this whole plank of wood is casting a really deep shadow. So let's just thicken that. Honestly, I may even go in with this one. I may get super bold and go with a, I know I only usually use the 05 and the 005 and the 01, but I think, let me find a piece of scrap paper. I think I want to, some of these lines are so thick. Oh, that's running out of ink. This is what happens when I don't use these pens very often. This is actually an 05. That is quite dark. Should I be brave? I don't know. Yeah, let's try it. What's the worst thing that can happen? I can fail. Yeah, I like that. I'm not going to use this often, but I would like to use it in a few places where I see, because it gives it a more really defined look. And some of these shadows are quite decisive here. I like that. Okay. There's a little bit of a plank in there. And I'm gonna scoot this over. Wasn't really in the right place. That should be there. And again, you don't have to get anything perfect. It's your drawing. No one's gonna see your original photograph unless you show them, so they won't know if details are different. And plus, when you draw things from a photograph, things aren't, you know, this scene doesn't look like this right now. Things are always changing. So it's okay if your drawing is a bit different. Okay. So I'm so tempted to go in right away with the texture, but again, because this ink does smudge, I just want to get in these main lines first. And particularly, let's get this window in. Now, I did not use stencils for any of this. I discussed this a little bit yesterday as well. There we go. I don't, I mean, stencils are okay, but I think it looks better if I try to draw it freehand. Okay, so now I'll do the outside bit. some shading underneath there. Let's go in with this big boy again. Put the heavy shadow on the underneath part. And so the 3 pens that I'm using for this drawing, I usually only use the 01, where is it? The 01 and the 005. But today I'm throwing in the 05. I don't know if you can see the nibs. They go in this order. The 05 is really thin. It's very fine, and I like that. And the 01 is similar. It's double, really, but it's still very fine. And then the 05 is much thicker. Okay. Now there's a little inside window on here as well. Okay, so that's the scary bit done. And again, I want to, there are a lot of shadows around this. And I'll do the shading, more of the shading in there later. I lied, I'm doing it now. Got a bit darker than I wanted because I thought I was using this pen. But that's all right, making mistakes work for you. All right. And when I paint these, starting this coming Sunday, the first live stream of November, I will, sorry. Okay. Yeah, I think I might use gouache in some of the areas. I want these to stand on their own as ink drawings, but I also want to be able to add color. And some of these, like that blue, that won't show up. I did it too dark because I'm mad at myself about it. Should I try to fix it? What do you think? I can use a Posca pen or a jelly roll marker. The problem with both is this paper is a bit cream colored. So this comes up as too white and this comes up as too silver. Tell me what you think. I don't like that I did that as dark as I did. So I'd like to fix it before I go printing these later for watercolor. So what's your opinion? Leave it or go in and try to lighten it a little bit? I'd love to hear your opinions. Hi, Sloke. Thanks for joining. Okay. Oh, you know what I didn't put in? I didn't put in this bowl or any of the fruit. Let's just put in some of that right now before I get in. I'm just freehanding it. There's a little apple. And then I don't know what that is. Something. And then we have some butter. And what is that? I don't know. It's like a little cup. But remember, somebody standing at this distance wouldn't be able to see any more than I can see. So I'm just kind of wanting to put in things as I see them without necessarily having to give them names. So there's a bowl there with this, oh, I think it's a wedge of cheese. All right, that's good. Good enough. Oh, AJ, you think leave it? I don't like it. Let's see. Let's see what it looks like if once I erase the. I guess it's all right. Okay, I'll leave it. AJ decided. And I can't believe it's just after 3:30. It's 3:30 here in England, and it's already dark almost completely. And it's only October. We just had our daylight savings on, well, yesterday. So, ugh. It's always tough. From now until December 21st, when the days start to get longer again. That's another reason that I plan the live streams for 3, because I know that it gets dark here. All winter it'll be dark, you know, for the next couple months. And I thought, well, I might as well draw. I know I'll probably be home by then. I won't be on any outings. Okay. These are tricky because they're so tiny. And I think I'm not going to put a lot of value on these at all. I'm going to let the watercolor later do that trick on the apple and the piece of bread. And then the same with this cheese. We'll just leave it. Okay. I mean, this is not the star of the show. How do I, Sloke asked, how do I plan to add the plants at the bottom? Basically, I just look for little patches of value. Let me see. These are the live streams that I've done so far. I was going to show these. So, you know, similar to what you see here, and in this one. Don't want to burn these in my candle. Probably, and that was, yeah, my philosophy for handling foliage is to look for the value, the light and the dark. I kind of feel like I overdid this, although there was a lot behind it. This was yesterday's. But when we get there, you can see. It's kind of hard to describe, but I'm, again, like, just the short answer is I'm looking for value and not to draw every line. And that's pretty much my approach for drawing in general. AJ, you've been away from the live streams for a while, so you haven't heard me say this, but my philosophy and what I tell my students is to look at things as if you are an alien from another planet and you have just landed here and you don't know what any of this stuff is because maybe you don't have plants or maybe you don't have trees. So you don't have the knowledge that there are a lot of different leaves there. You just see a variety of different value and different textures. So that's what you're going to be drawing to send back to your planet to show what this magical planet we live on looked like. Okay, I'm breaking rule. I'm doing some of the shading already. All right, again, I'm trying to stay committed to just putting in the lines now and then having fun with the texture after. Yeah. Yeah, I think people get afraid all the time of drawing leaves and trees and bushes. That's probably, next to portraiture, that's the thing that students are most afraid of in my experience. And the trick really is to just not think of them as that. You have to try to get rid of the name and just look at trying to draw what you actually see. So what I'm seeing here, for instance, is this shape, and this shape has lines. And there's my shish kebab skewer. And I can see that this shape, you know, this part, this line that's a part of this shape has an angle like that. So you can see I've got that angle already suggested here. And I can also see that that line starts, you know, at this section of this leg. So there's that section, there's the angle. So I'm just putting it in there. So I'm always looking at the shapes around, if that makes sense. And I'm also looking at the negative space to see what other shapes are created around and within an object. And that's what makes drawing fun. And there are little things that you can do to practice that. But eventually, if you do it enough, your brain just starts to look around and do those things on its own, if that. Just in the same way when you're riding a bike, you're thinking about all of the little things that you need to do, but then once you've done it several times, you just hop on and go. And drawing is very similar. Okay, so I did sort of put these in the same area. I'll do the shading again after. I was really careful. Again, I used that site size method that I talked about in yesterday's live stream. Oh, SL, when you see trees, you see hopelessness. Maybe I'll do a whole live stream at some point just on trees, or just a video about drawing trees. But trees are actually quite interesting because, you know, you have your trunk and then you have groups of leaves. And so the trick is to look for the groups of leaves, and those groups they actually have shapes of their own. Also, welcome SL, by the way. Can I show you different texture lines for trees? Yes, I can. We have a few different texture lines here. So this is going to be more, I mean, this is stippling. Although this is a darker value, you can see I've already done a black and white version. So you can see how much darker these trees are. There's a light one here in the front, but these are quite dark. And there's a lot of light, even in the black and white version, you can see a lot of light speckled in. So the best way to approach that really is going to be a combination of stippling, which is like creating dots like that. And that can be quite time consuming. So I'll probably, being me and wanting to not make the longest, I do sort of this combination. You can see this isn't quite stippling, but it's a little bit of like a stipple scribble that I like to do. I don't know if that's showing up well. Let me see if I can bring it closer to the camera. I don't know if the camera will adjust. But that's just straight up stippling or pointillism. And this is like my scribble stippling. And so probably for these, because of, I'm not thinking about different texture lines. I'm looking at what the texture is. And then for these, the grass, there are a lot of clumps, you know, so I'll look for the shapes in the clumps and just try to scribble those in like that. And follow some of these. I will probably use my 05, to be honest. My 005, I mean. You know, there are grass lines, but they're haphazard. And remember, once you start calling them grass, then you're going to start drawing like that, which you don't want to do. So just look for, like, think about, you know, there's a cluster of lines right there and there. And so yeah, so that's how we'll approach the grass. And then for these leaves down here, I'll put in there, I see some areas. The trick here is to squint. All right, so when you squint at this, go ahead and squint along with me. But if I'm squinting at this, a lot of these leaves are very light in comparison to the leaves underneath, right? And the shadows underneath. If I was making like a really formal drawing that I wanted to be perfect, I might spend more time on that. I don't normally with painting because if I'm doing ink drawing, I almost always include watercolor with it. And so I will do a lot of that shaping with watercolor, which we're going to be doing in live streams in November. So you'll see how I do it with that. But what I'll do for this is I'll find some of these shapes and just sort of put them in as clusters of shapes. And again, I'll drive myself crazy if I try to put down exactly what I see. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just look for an impression. I'm currently looking at this area, right? So I'll put in a few of the areas that are going to be light. Then I'll go in with a darker pen and darken the areas around it, but not super dark, just sort of dark, leaving some space because, that's just what I see. So, and by doing that, I can give an impression of what I see. And I don't want all of these lines to be outlined, or all of these leaves rather, to be outlined harshly. And for some of them, I might do some hatching for some of the shaded bits. And then I might go in and enhance a couple of the lines, but probably not all of them. And, this is not the star of the show. This is the star of the show. As an artist, you have a decision to emphasize the area that you want your audience to focus on. I don't want my audience's eyes to just be like, oh, look at those beautiful leaves. This is incidental. This is just part of the frame, as is this. So I don't want to get very detailed or busy about any of that. This is where I want the eye to be drawn, right? This blue, beautiful blue door, the table with the red legs. I know we're not seeing the color, but this is the scene where I want the audience to look. And if you look at this, so if you just take a moment and you stare at this door, notice that your eye is only seeing value down here and up here, right? Everything else sort of goes into a soft focus. And so you're not seeing all these sharp lines and leaves. You're just seeing kind of an impression. And so that's what I try to do, unless the tree is the focal point. But in this case, it isn't. So I'm looking more just to create the impression of value. That was I hope that explanation made some sense. So now that I've done that, I better get busy drawing a little bit more. So I'm putting in this fence, this newel poster. I love the way everything feels handmade in this. And again, I determined my light source by looking at this area, mostly because of the shadows. So I want to put those in. Faint shadow here, but the darkest shadows on this side. And then this, again, will be darker over here. Sloke, that makes a lot of sense. SL, thank you. You're welcome. I'm glad it makes sense. Glad you made, oh, Javier, you came. Yeah, that kind of, you inspired me yesterday by asking. I felt bad. I know there were so many people who wanted me to draw the Hobbit house. And I thought, well, I might as well do it live, do a surprise. Now, as I'm putting in these posts, I'm leaving, I don't see them all, right? I only see little parts of them because of this foliage and these leaves covering them. So I'm only going to put in what I see and leave space to come in later with the leaves and the foliage. And remember, I'm just getting in these main lines so that I can erase everything and then just have the fun part of adding the texture. Oh, yesterday was great too. Thank you, Javier. I watched back some of the replay last night, and I kept thinking, just draw. Stop talking and draw. It seemed like I had about 20 sentences for every single line that I drew. It's no wonder it took so long. That said, I don't know. Once a teacher, always a teacher. If people ask questions, I want to answer them. Okay, I don't see much of this one at all. I am putting in some of the shading. I mean, like that is part of the fence post, but it's dark. So I am going to put that in right away so that I don't have to use brain power later. Like this is quite dark. Right there. 1, 2, 3. Oh no, it isn't. I messed up. It doesn't matter. This one's dark. Make your mistakes work for you. And just remember, this is your show. So you can do whatever you want. And if you make a mistake, nobody's going to know but you. So don't lose any sleep over it and don't beat yourself up over it. Okay, this is where the perspective starts to turn a little bit. And then I know that there are fence posts there because I don't think it would stop right there, but I don't see them. So I'm not going to make it up. And I don't see them go all the way to the ground. So I'm not putting in what I don't see. I'm eager to get in with this texture, but I'm going to hold off. And then there's this line here of this post right there. I can see a little bit of that. And then the rest is leaves. Okay. And then here I see a few leaves, a few shapes rather. Let's call them shapes. I think if we call them leaves, it just creates anxiety for people. So some of these shapes are quite light compared to the bit around them. So I'm going to put in a few of those. And they're not all in their different organic shapes. This one looks like a heart. And then I can go in later and put the value around it. I just want to get the main shapes here. Okay, so this will be foliage. There's some stone. I'm pretty sure that's stone. It's reading a stone to my eye. Again, the thing, if you make a mistake, just throw away the reference picture, says SL. Yeah, nobody will know. Yeah, except the people here. But honestly, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Oh, you know what I didn't notice before is there's an accompanying bench that's just peeking through. And so I'll show you how. Again, I'm timid. I want to put it in with pencil first. So I'm using my skewer. And you see that angle? And you see where it lands up. So it's just about like that. And then I can use the skewer as well and just swoop down the picture like this. And I can see it starts about here. And now these are the sorts of things that once you do them enough, you will, you don't need this. Your eye just automatically is doing them. So it ends about here, like just that little bit that we see. And that's all we see, but it is there and I like it. So I do want to put that in. And I don't actually see the top. I see a vine, but I wanted to know. I think the top is there because of this ends there. And it doesn't, yeah. So just put in that suggestion. I think I might put in more than I see because I like that. I can always turn that into a vine later. There is this little vine, which I like. So let's put this in, and this is quite pale. I'm not concerned about it looking exactly like the reference, as always with foliage. I'm not into that kind of torture. So I just want a suggestion of how it's going to look. All right, just a little vine coming off the side there. I did put in some of these. Again, some of these are quite light. Some of these leaves. Although I just said we were going to call them shapes, didn't I? So that one is a bit of a feature, this one. So I do want to put in some of these. And this one, I like the haphazard quality of the fact that they peek over the fence. And this one, it's like a weed. Now this is the tricky part when you get into this with drawing versus painting, is these are all very light and pale in value, and the area behind it is very dark. So if I'm looking just at the value, this would be light, but I have a trick. I'm going to use some masking fluid on some of these before I get in with putting in all that dark bits. So for now, I'm just putting them in like that. Actually, you know what? I want to have fun. Let's experiment. I'm taking my masking fluid pen. We did this yesterday. I'm trying to get it. And this is my Molotow masking fluid marker. And I have to shake it up. So I'm shaking it up like this, but I'm doing it off screen. And then I need to pump it a few times before I start, just to make sure it's flowing correctly. And it's a bit watery. I've used it enough to know, so I'm going to shake it up a little bit more. And it actually is the same color as the door. Okay, perfect. That's how I want it to look. So what I'm going to do, because there's quite a lot of these reverse plants, is I'm going to kind of draw on some leaves with the masking fluid so that I can shade around it. And I think it'll make things quicker. So basically, any of these areas that have a lot of dark around them, I'm going to preserve them with the masking fluid now, before I get busy. And unfortunately, this marker, it doesn't get super thin. I mean, I could use proper masking fluid. I'm trying to ask myself, are there any other light areas that are going to have shading around them that I'll want to preserve? Maybe I'll go in with some of these leaves. that I've drawn in. And then what I'll do is I'll add the dark around it and then we'll erase that later. Let's see. Okay, and again, I'm squinting. And let me see if I'm in the right spot. So I'm wanting to look at this one right here that extends from here. There's a lot of dark around that, so I might just put in a few leaf shapes that I can then erase. All right, so what I'm doing, if you're interested in kind of knowing the process, is above the door. Oh, do you mean like these leaves here? I could, yeah. Some of these, I mean, are going to be kind of easy. These are quite dark. There's a little bit of a light one there. I think I'm not going to do those because I'll show you why later, but just some of these, squinting, some of these are the lightest lights of the, but again, I don't want to get too crazy or caught up. Okay, as the marker, you might need to pump it. And then this one. And I don't want everything to go in this direction. Some of these go in different directions, so I want to make sure I represent all different areas. All right. I think that's pretty good. Yeah. Let's go with that. We're going to let that dry for a minute. I have some questions. Javier says, so are you using the masking fluid just to highlight where the lighter values are? Yes. Will you be drawing over them once you remove it? Yes. Yes and yes. I will be drawing over some of them and outlining some of them after. But I'm not, right now it's wet, so I'm going to move to other areas whilst that dries. But yes, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to draw around it. Put in a lot of the darks and some of the mediums, then remove this and then alter things a little bit as I need to. Okay, so this is quite interesting. It's like a guttering system, like a rain gutter or rain shield. And that actually isn't, this is an area where there's some light values that are catching the sunlight. And so we've got this foliage that creeps over the door. We've got rain here in England. Big surprise, I'm sure, to everybody. But it's just coming down now. We have some cows in the field across from my window here. I don't know if you can hear the rain on the window. But the cows were lying down earlier, and that usually means that it's going to rain. All right, so I don't want to get too caught up in any of these details. So I'm just lightly putting things in. I don't know, can you hear that rain? It's quite heavy. I love that sound. Okay, so there's a lot of shading, and there are even some planks of wood holding that guttering up. There and there especially. But it's quite dark just underneath there. I'm starting to get into details. I'm not ready yet for details, but this is still drying. I do want to put in, there's a little bit of a house roof there. Do you see that in the background? I don't want that in. I don't need the distraction. Oh, look, you get some ASMR here with the rain on the window. All right, so that goes like that. And then I'm looking to see this tree. And again, there's a lot of space and stippling in this tree. It's the top of a tree, really. So I don't want that edge to be hard. And then we got a bit of a fun shape here. I'm going to make this a little bit shorter than it is. And we've got some tree branches. Okay, we just see a little bit of that. And we'll put that in after. And then the way I'm going to deal with this is just give a suggestion, a nod to some of these leaves of grass or blades of grass. Oh, I've got some questions here. SL asks, do people use masking fluid for pencil drawing? So far, I've only been using battery eraser for highlights. I've never seen it used with pencil drawing, but there's no reason you can't use anything you want. I mean, the nice thing about masking fluid is you can completely erase it, and then you can just leave the white that's beneath it, or you can then, add a color or add a lighter value. I've not really seen it used with ink drawing before, but I do use it with my watercolor, and I just thought, well, why not? It's the same idea. So, I mean, you can use it with whatever you want, basically. So why not experiment and see if it works for you? And ASMR session with the rain added, yes. So you heard that, I'm guessing. Okay, so there are some vines that go here, putting in just a few. I'm not paying attention. This is still wet. I really put this on thick, so I'm trying to not smudge it or smear it. And again, I don't want it to look exactly like what I'm seeing. Well, I mean, it could, but I don't want to give myself an ulcer. I would just want to have a nice time drawing. So this area of the slope, you can see that this part right here is all darker than this bit above it. So I do want to, oh, my poor little dog wants to go out. And my husband is not home right now, so I may have to let you all draw for 2 minutes and go let her out. Okay, I have to. Sorry, I'll be right back. Okay, for anybody who waited, she did not want to go outside. She wanted her dinner because she doesn't know it was daylight savings. And her belly is telling her it's time to eat. Actually, this is a combination of stone and also really dark leaves. Sorry, I'm a bit breathless from running up the stairs. I'm just going to put in what I see. And I'm going to use this cover sheet. Let's tackle this grassy area. So the way I like to approach texture is to just ask myself what it looks like. You know, and this texture looks like a combination of haphazard lines. You know, the overall feeling is lots of little intersecting lines. There is this vine piece that's over this part of the door. It's probably right around here. So it's gloriously in the sun. So I might want to just add some of those right now. Let's see if there are any questions. Inner peace. I don't even remember what that was in regard to anymore. The ASMR, maybe. All right, so I'm just putting in some of these shapes. I'm a bit haphazard. I'm going a little bit all over the place, and that is how I tend to draw. I try to look at the big picture as much as possible. And as I'm doing this, again, my eye is on my source, which in this case is the photograph. And I'm looking at that more than I'm looking at my drawing almost. Especially when I'm doing textures or patterns, I find that to be the most useful. Okay. So that little deluge that we had seems to have abated, and now we have just a stream of light rain that we can't hear. Okay, so I think, going back to the masking fluid marker, I want to, do you see those? There's just a couple of light areas, like along there. And they're not in a linear fashion, they're a bit haphazard. it's where the edge of that, I think it's guttering to keep the rain off of the cottage. I think it extends out a little bit, and the reason I think that is because of the dark shadows underneath. So I want to preserve that. I want to, let's just preserve that. Like, what? Why not? You know, let's make it fun. I don't need to do any of those, but I will do this guy. There. And if you don't have masking fluid, you can use, well, you can use a white crayon. You can use like wax. So if you have a white waxy candle, like maybe a birthday candle, you can put those down, and you know, the ink or the watercolor, if you're doing watercolor, will resist going in that area. The problem with those is you can't, sorry, my dog is here now making a lot of noise. But you can't then erase those the way you can masking fluid, but they certainly work. And you know, sometimes you just got to use what you've got. Okay. I'm being almost a bit scribbly here. And then this is lighter. This is lighter. But yeah, I'm going along this whole ridge right now as I was waiting for this. See, this is still a bit tacky, and it shouldn't be. So I'm letting it have its time to dry. All right, so I'm just focusing on texture and value. All right, so texture is created by lines and value, and sometimes shapes. But I'm also looking at the value, and you know, there's a little dark bit over here, but not as dark as this, but there's like, you can see there's a ridge. And this is all quite thick. There are a lot of layers under there. But this value, you can see how light this whole value is. So I don't want to get too caught up in the lighter areas of getting overly dark. This is the lightest areas of this composition are, let's get my pointer, are this section, some of the leaves in this section, this post, and this area. And a little bit, this little white light tree, a little bit of a reflection in this window here, and then these pieces of fruit and the cheese. So I want to not be too dark here. I'd rather focus on emphasizing the darkness in the other areas, the shadows. So I don't want to get too crazy. I'm using my finest fine liner here. Okay. Oh my gosh, she scared me. All right, you can see I'm putting in some of these leaves. There's more ASMR, maybe not the kind you wanted. All right. Some of these vines that are just kind of above, but it's you know, it's a bit of a, places like this, you know, they are a bit haphazard and a bit of a mess normally. So I'm leaving there. I can see some of the lines. All right. And I am determined to not, what time is it now? So I've been on about a little over an hour. I can't seem to make these live streams an hour. I tend to just, I mean, this is a complicated scene. It's one of those scenes that looks easy. If you were to look at this and compare it to, you know, maybe even something like this, it's just, there's more information, and a lot of the information is little. And because we're zoomed into this, it's not trees in the distance except for here. It does require a little bit more thought. But again, just putting in these overlapping leaves. And let's work our way from the top down. All right, so I'm just wanting, with my lightest fine liner, wanting to give a nod to some of the haphazard lines that I see here. And this ridge here has some shadows. And that extends kind of over here. But it's patchy, you know? So I'm happy with the way this section is shaping up. So I'm just doing a bit of a type of a scribbling, starting with putting in the dark value patches that I see, and then some directional lines that mimic what I'm seeing with the grasses there. This area is a lot lighter, so there won't be as much, just a few. And then there's a little bit of a ridge there. Dane, I love seeing your drawings pop up in my feed. Thank you. That means a lot. I really appreciate that. It's nice to have. It's nice to know that people are enjoying things, and that I bring some happiness. All right, so if I'm squinting at this, you can see again this area is quite dark. So I want to make sure that there's a distinction between the darks that I have in this background and the ones that I have here, but it's not, I mean, there's still are some lighter colored blades mixed in the bunch there. So I'm just darkening some of those. How are you all doing? Are you drawing along? What stage are you all at? All right. And then I think I'm going to put my music back on since we don't have any more rain. So what I'm doing is I'm constantly standing up and assessing the situation. So you want to be moving back from your work as much as you can. because it's going to give you a fresh perspective, and it's also going to help you match your values better. Okay. So I think we're getting there. I want to put in these trees in the background. So I'm going to do that technique that we talked about earlier, where it's sort of like a scribble stipple. And I'm just, this tree that's a bit lighter, I'm just going to go around it. And there are some areas when we talk about the shapes where it's just a bit lighter. And you can see by doing the scribble stipple, it's faster. You know, it's faster than going like, you know, look at how long just that section takes. This brings me back to my childhood. When I was in high school, I went through a big phase of doing, look, now I'm doing stippling, of doing, you know, all pointillism. I grew up in Chicago, and they have some great impressionistic paintings at the Art Institute of Chicago, and they have Georges Seurat's Sunday Afternoon in the Park. If you're not familiar with it, check it out. But it's huge. It's almost mural size, but it's all pointillism in color, and so, you know, if you get really close to it, you can't even see the details. So I was drawn to pointillism, and I created several pieces with a quill, not a fine liner, they didn't exist, but with you know, a quill and ink. And so you can see that it's building up, you know, pretty nicely. It gets darker up here. But yes, just straight up traditional stippling can take forever to do. Again, I'm just going around this tree to give that suggestion of some of those branches, and I'm ignoring that house. And my dog is here because I have some turkey for her, and she knows it. She's a little bit of a piglet. Okay, now this is much darker in this section of the tree. And I'm just going darker over where that house is as well. And at the base, where it meets, I'm darkening it up a bit. It's darker in here. Just looking at the values that I see. And what I can do when I'm finished with this bit of stipple scribble is, if I feel like it still needs to be darker, that's when I'll go in and do some hatching in certain sections, and then that ties it together really nicely. I mean, if you were drawing with graphite, I think, was it SL who asked? Yeah, I think it was. Like, I would probably just do straight up shading. I wouldn't probably do as much line work, but you can. There are certainly many people who do lots of intricate line work with graphite as well. But I wouldn't do it on watercolor paper. It wouldn't really do it justice. I would do it on a proper drawing paper. Okay, so this gets a little bit lighter as it heads out. This area is catching the sun more. So my stippling is going to be a bit more sporadic out here. And here. but this area is darker. Can you hear my bratty dog? She's growling. And I don't want to go all the way to the edge. I'm trying to leave a little bit of space. AJ stepping out for a minute. I don't blame you, AJ. Step out for me. Thanks for stopping in. Okay. All right, and then down here, in this section of the tree, even though this tree itself is very light, there are some dark shadows on the underneath part. And there's some directional lines happening that I want to just allude to. Just like that. And then I think that's getting pretty good. It will need darkening up, but I'm going to do that with some hatching in a little bit. Let's do this tree first, and then we'll do some hatching. So it's darkest at the base, so we'll do a bit of our stipple scribble. And again, it's not, none of it is solid against the grass. The grass is I wonder what my life's going to look like when I don't have to do an ink drawing every day. Tomorrow it's going to be very strange. I won't have to complete a drawing. I have lots of editing to do from all of the Inktober drawings. I haven't posted hardly any of them. But it's nice to have the collection, and I like doing challenges like this because you grow so much. I mean, halfway through you are asking yourself, well, at the beginning it's fun, and then halfway through you're asking yourself why you committed to this insanity. And then, you know, then you feel like, well, I'm already halfway there. So, and then by the time you get 2/3 in, you just, you know, you're probably not enjoying it for a while. But, you know, when you put in that much work, you can't really stop unless there's an emergency or... So, some of my favorite pieces that I did for Inktober are the ones that I did the first 10 days. But not all. I'm going to have one of these. Here, do you want one? You can't buy those in supermarkets in England. They don't have anything so wildly sugary as American candy, but I am American, and it's one of my favorite little seasonal treats, so I ordered some from Amazon. Spent a king's ransom on them. Now I'm being a little bit deliberately different, spacing these out a little bit differently here, because this is a different type of a tree, I believe, than this. And it just will give it a bit more distinctiveness. And again, it's always darkest down by where the edge of the land is. I think I'm doing a bit of a different shape. I kind of like that. Again, this is my picture, so I can go off script a bit. Okay. I think I'm getting happy with that. And I just want to make sure I've drawn all the bits of graphite, that I've represented them. And then I can erase. And then it's just freehand inking from there. Yeah, I think I mean, this curve you're not going to see, so that doesn't matter if I erase that. All right, let's erase. So I'm going to use my kneaded eraser, which needs a bit of cleaning, but get that out of the way. I want to be careful to not erase in any of these areas where the blue is, because that will take it off. But I do want to. Just gives me a better idea of what I'm dealing with. So we missed that. Okay, at this point I'm going to go in with the vines. I'm going to start with the ones over here, over the roof, or over the door, under the eaves. I'm going to give the rest of this turkey to my dog first, though, so she stops begging. Okay, that's all there is. That's all. Oh, God. Crumb, ASMR dog eating. So what I'm doing now is I've drawn in sort of like where the main leaves are. I'm doing some shading around there to show where the darker values are. And then on some of them, you know, there's some shading within the leaf itself. There are a lot of really dark values in this section from the eaves. So I'm going to pay a bit more attention to this area than I am down here, because again, this is all part of the focal point where I want the viewer's eye to be drawn. And this is just kind of, this whole section here, it's just a cluster of values. And I can't really see any distinguishing leaves or objects. So I'm just, you know, again, putting in the suggestion of what I see, different shapes, different values. And the more you practice, the easier these things become. And I recommend doing the things that scare you. If you're afraid of trees, draw more trees. If you're afraid of foliage, draw more foliage, because you'll come up with ways and you will improve with time. And look at the masters. Look at artists who do things you like and do a copy of their work. You know, we call that doing a master copy, and you will grow a lot with that. The whole GCSE and A-level programs in the UK and elsewhere in the world are kind of predicated on that, doing master copies, because I mean it's known that you will learn a lot from emulating somebody else's style. So, you know, copy Rembrandt. Just Google Rembrandt trees, Rembrandt landscape drawings, not the paintings, but Rembrandt landscape paintings or drawings. Durer, D-U-R-E-R, also has some wonderful drawings. Van Gogh, incredible. The line work in his drawings. I mean, you see it in his paintings. And he was known to having gone to museums and drawn from the paintings of the masters. He has copies of other artists' paintings, and you can see those in his letters and in the many things that we have left of his. Okay, so every once in a while I'm taking a line and emphasizing it. And I want to do the woodwork, but the woodwork is going to be my reward from suffering through the foliage. And the brickwork here. And this is where that masking fluid is really coming in handy. because I can just draw around it. Remember, these eaves are a lot darker. So it's okay to be bolder in some of these areas. And this is our post that's holding that up. So you see some really dark values around there. And I'm squinting all the time, squinting. Got some more rain against the window here. I'm being a bit directional with some of the hatching on this as well. And a lot of these are darker, so I will be doing some hatching over those later. The lightest ones are these over here and these over here, but these are kind of a mid-tone. There's a dark leaf under here. It's all in shadow. Again, just work one section at a time. Take your time. Move things along, but take your time. So don't get so caught up that you're spending the whole day there. That'll just make you hate drawing. How's that looking? Sloke tanning has to go now. Bye. Thanks for stopping by, Sloke. I know these are long when we get into all these details. You can always catch the ending on the replay. See how it all turns out. Yeah, especially when we get into really intricate details like this, it can be quite time consuming. And this is the most zoomed in of any of the drawings or any of the photographs that I've used. And I normally would shy away from doing something like this on a live stream, but I really wanted to do a Hobbit house. Okay, so kind of what I'll do here, let me finish drawing them in a little bit more. Once I've put in the darkest darks and the lightest lights, I'm going to go in with some hatching to put in those midtones. And some of these lines are going to be defined and some are not. And the best way to define a line is to put in the shadow behind it. I don't want it to look too tight though. It's looking a little bit tighter than I want it, but some of the hatching will soften that. Okay, so this area in here, there's a lot of shadow. Okay. I think I'm happy-ish with the way that's going. I want to get some dark, some of these areas where I've had the masking fluid, I want to make sure that I get the shadows around them like I see them, because that's going to make them pop more. All right. I'm going to stand up, squint, have a look, see what else I want to add before I get in with some of the hatching. You don't want every leaf to be defined, or it just gets too busy. Now these, a lot of these are, let's do some hatching. And let's remove, I don't know where my rubber, here it is. I'm going to erase this bit of blue. Once I've erased it, I'm kind of going up against where I want that highlight and just seeing where the darkest parts are, and just because that's going to make it pop out more. All right, and now if I'm looking at these vines, this section here is light, right? So like this section here, this one leaf is lighter, but these other ones, they're a bit darker. So I'm going to do some, maybe sharpen a few edges, but I'm going to do some hatching now. And you can see that adds some more variety and value. Okay. And let's do some of the wood now. Actually, let's do the bricks first. Normally, I don't get specific with things like brickwork, but there are only a few, and they add a lot of charm. So I'm going to put some of them in. And I'm not putting them in exactly as they are, obviously, but it's nice to see it. And then we'll do some hatching to darken those up a bit. And then I'll do some hatching the other way just to make the whole thing a bit darker, because even though the whites, they're light, but they're not the lightest light. Okay, we have a bit of brickwork there. And let's do some shading. This is the fun part. Okay, sorry, I got a bit quiet there. I'm just trying to, what I'm doing here is I'm looking at some of the distinctive lines that I see that make it wood. And I see a lot of that here as well. I'm just putting all that in. And then again, we have some brickwork around here. And there. And those bricks are darker value. So we'll put a bit of hatching in there. a little bit, blend in a bit more. And then we got some brickwork here. It's a little bit of a brick like that. A little one there. There's this one. And I have foliage going into the other one, so that's all. Shade them up a little bit. And a little bit of hatching. And I think I'm going to leave these light. This one's slightly darker, but I like the fact that it being lighter helps it stand out a bit more. I think I'll add a bit more punch to some of these lines, but I'm going to leave that. Because I like it. There, I think it's starting to come together there. Make that lantern pop out a bit more by darkening some of the shadows around it. Okay. Time for a treat. Help yourselves. Oh, my dog heard that. Not you, you've had your dinner and your snacks. Okay. We've got this one as well. I'm going with my O1. There's a lot of dark shadows underneath. Just drawing around some of this masking fluid. This extends behind. And then this whole area, we've got some stones, but it's just a lot of darkness. Got some die-hard fans here staying until the end. Thanks for keeping me company. I know when these live streams go so long, gosh, it's a lot to ask. I mean, the nice thing about the reason I like doing live streams on YouTube is that it's filmed for later. So if you only make, 5 minutes, you can come in later and you can see how it turned out. You can fast forward. It's going to be there forever. Okay, these are the darkest darks, this area. So I'm needing to be brave here. But we've got some stones up here. The rain's really coming down now. It's nice. I wish I could see it, but it's pitch black outside now. All I see is some drops on the window. Okay, so I'm just going to do some hatching in this area. I'm just trying to allude to the fact that I see some different values on shapes, but it's not really clear what they are. And again, my aim is to just draw what I'm seeing. We've got this bench here. Poppy, will you stop? Go lay down. All right, so we've got some wood grain here, and there are, you know, some of these leaves that go around it. All right, so, and we see, you know, these are all vines around this bench. And darkness around it. And the same on this side. Let's actually draw in this table a bit better. I mean, there's a bit, I think, of a tablecloth there, or some lines, but I'm not going to put that in. Now, there is darkness. It's darker down here. There's lots of shading. Sorry if I'm being too quiet, but I'm anxious to finish. And if I talk less, I'll draw more. But if you have questions, please put them in the comments and I will be happy to answer them. No, Poppy. Go lay down, honey. I think I'm going to have to put my dog in the other room because she's not going to give us any peace. Okay, let's go. Okay. So I'm just alluding to these dark areas here. This is going to be, we need some candy corn for this. I mean, this is all so inky black. I don't know how dark. I mean, some of in this area, it just isn't up here. We've just the darkest, darkest darks. So I really want to put those in. I'm using my 01 pen for this. All right, now here, I'm keeping in mind that I've got this masking fluid down. And I'm trying to outline those shapes and also bring some dark value up around them, because that's going to define them when I remove the masking fluid. If I don't sort of outline around them and feather out the dark values, they might just get lost again. So this gets really dark around here, and then we have a different sort of a foliage that this sort of morphs into. So we've got a few of these vines. They kind of go down into the ground. Lots of shading. And then the whole lightness of this post, it's not a line, it's just basically it's up against dark values from the earth. So I want to try to eliminate the line. You see what I'm doing by pulling out the value from around it, from next to it. And that's going to make this pop better and look less, you know, kind of cartoony. Not that it looks cartoony, but I think you get the point. And then that, we'll extend that out. There, I mean, there are a couple vines, but I'm not going to put those in. I'll just leave a couple areas like that. That should do the trick. All right, getting there. Not too bad. I still have to do some value in there, which is going to be fun. So I'll save it as a little treat. And I'm just kind of scribbling a bit around these planks of, I think they're just stone, or not stone, sorry, logs. Okay. I'm getting it quite dark, but I don't want it to be solid because there's a lot of earth things here. There's actually another stone or a piece of log there somewhere. Now we'll go in with this and try to define around this masking fluid portion so that when I erase it, it will help enhance that shape. Now these tips of the fence posts are quite light. They're in the bright sunlight that's coming from above. And again, next to this, we have our dark value. Sandra Carolina, is it my internet or is the camera of the camera is unfocused? It could be that I lost my sunlight. So let me thank you for saying that. I'm going to add some more light to the scene and we'll see if that helps. Was that any better? Hopefully a little more light on the subject. When I started, I had the light from the window, and then I also had my ring light, but my ring light's been doing all the work since the sun went down. A little, my internet isn't the best, okay. It's a little, I'm looking at my second thing here, and it might be a little unfocused. I'm going to try to get this light even closer. And that might help. Someday I need to get better about understanding getting the best lighting for these situations and best camera. Though my iPhone has a really good camera. That's what I'm using to film this. But I can't, or I'm sure somebody could, but I can't figure out how to adjust it while we're in the middle of the stream. So hopefully that's better though. Okay, so for this area, there's light values in there, but they're surrounded by a lot of dark values. So I'm creating this pattern. You can see how I'm doing it. It's just sort of one shaky circle next to another, I guess is how I would describe it. Just trying to put in organic shapes just to give the illusion of these vines or bushes. And then we'll go in and use some hatching afterwards. And welcome, Sandra, by the way. Thanks for stopping by. So yeah, we're drawing this Hobbit house, and we're in the texture part. So adding all the different foliage, paying attention to the different values. And also in the back of my mind, I'm trying to think of the fact that I am going to be taking these to the printer to make into postcards for watercolor and gouache, little coloring sheets. So I don't want to completely cover the dark areas with ink as I would if it was only ever going to be an ink drawing. Okay, I'm pretty happy with the way this little piece is going. And again, we don't need to be completely, we don't need to get every single blade because we want the focal point to be here, and this is just a frame, part of the frame. And this is much darker. The ridge of shadow underneath. And we've got a shadow here. It's quite dark. And then this, between these two posts, it's also quite dark. Okay. Putting in some of the wood grain here from these posts. And again, this part is in shadow. All right. Okay. And this is actually, there's, we can put in some of the shading here. right, sorry about my dog. I'm going to call my husband and see if he can rescue her from... Can you please take her, because I'm just finishing. Okay, I'm finishing up my live stream and she's a menace. I know, she's eaten, she's being bossy. She does. Well, her brain is telling us that we didn't have daylight savings and it's time to... Right. All right, well, thanks for trying. Bye. Yeah, we have a dog who doesn't know it's daylight savings, and she's been allowed to be a little bossy boots, and even though she's eaten, she doesn't like being locked out, but... Oh, the quality increased. Well, that's great. I'm happy to hear it. We've got some wood grain here too. And I'm going to darken again some of this area. I do a bit of cross hatching there. Darken some of this area around this little plant so that when we erase that blue, it'll pop more. Oh no, we've gone through an entire little candle. We'll put her out of the way. Yeah, normally I'd probably be taking a break around now, but because we're live, and I do want to finish it on screen so that you have something to look at the end. So I'm soldering on. But you don't need to if you want to come and catch the replay and see how it turned out. Okay, so some of these I drew in with the masking fluid, so I'm going to outline that. Oh, honey, no, she can't come in here.
She has to.
No, she can't come in here. She just barks and growls.
That's what she's doing.
No, she's a... She's...
I can't record a note.
I can't record either, honey. Oh no, we have the dog again. Puppy, lay down. You get one biscuit. See, you can see how I spoil my dog. You get one biscuit and that's it, and then you need to go lay down. Take that and go lay down. That's all. All right. Okay, so I'm just outlining these. We have a few more final touches. We've got the door and the window to beef up a little bit with some texture, but I want to get these vines out of the way and then remove the blue of the masking fluid. Again, if we're looking for the darkest areas of the composition, it's this whole patch through here. And so these vines, they're on the periphery, they're meant to sort of frame and draw us in. So we don't want to get too specific about them. But we do want to acknowledge their existence. No, honey. You're being very naughty. Go lay down. All right, so there is a lot of dark value around these leaves, and I'm just trying to preserve where some of the light ones are going to be before I remove the masking fluid. Just to make sure. Otherwise, I've done this before where I mask things out, but then I forget to define it before I erase it, and then it's just kind of a blob when you erase it. So I'm making sure to darken the areas around these. You know, like this one has a lot of dark around it. Nice thing about the masking fluid is we can just go completely over it like that. And it will still erase, and then that definition will show up. So I'm putting in just a little bit what I see of this board, this plank of the fence. And that's kind of it for that one. And then around it, you know, we have some leaves and some dark values and some mid values. Sandra says, I never thought about using masking fluid to keep the whites clean, not when drawing with ink. It seems kind of obvious now. Yeah, you know what, Sandra, I hadn't either. It just, I've been using it a lot with my tiny paintings and with watercolor, especially the pen. It's just convenient. And because I often with watercolor will use line and wash, I just thought, why not try it with just the ink? And it's been great, really. It's one of those inspired things that has had good results. Okay, so there's some, you know, vines around here. These are the ones that are going to be a bit darker in value. Again, I'm going for an impression of what I'm seeing here. As opposed to just being really specific. And I said it earlier today, but this is not the star of the show. This is the star of the show. So this is just designed to get the eye flowing over there. And then these planks are a lot darker. So we've got some nice rain on the windows still. In real life, not in the drawing. It's going to be really fun when we remove this. So, I mean, there are some other light. I didn't put in all the lights, so I'm just trying to be kind of haphazard with that rest of them and fun. Putting in some shapes. And then lots of the darks around them. And some of these shapes. There's some darks under here. I don't want to go all the way to the edge of the page. I'm trying to leave a little bit of a line around it. Don't even know why anymore. Some of them work better with a vignette. This one probably would be fine if I went all the way to the edge, but I like to leave some space. I'm trying to create a bit of a vignette here. And this. Okay. All right. It's a mystery how that's going to look when we're done, but it'll be fun to discover it. I think maybe my dog's growling because I'm talking to you all, and she sees that there's not a person in the room, so she thinks I must be either crazy or maybe that I'm talking to her, and she's very curious. She's not normally this vocal and needy. She's throwing me off my game here a little bit, though. No pops. Okay, so there are a lot of, darks around some of this. With the, the lights popping out. I don't know if this is going to look like a total mess or not when I'm done, but it's an experiment here. I'm trying to get through it relatively quickly, but it is, as I said earlier, probably one of the most complicated scenes that I've done for Inktober. I wouldn't normally choose to do a live stream of this, but I wanted to do a Hobbit house, and I couldn't really find one that was far away that I liked. So I thought this one, which was a royalty-free image, would be a good kind of compromise. So we're getting there, slowly but surely. So I always have these ideas when I start a live stream, like, oh, I'll be able to do this in an hour. Because, you know, when I'm drawing without talking, I can draw more quickly. And yeah, not the case today. But it's Halloween, it's the last day of Inktober, so it's nice to go out with a bang. And there we got this little patch left, and then we erase and see what we're dealing with. See if it was a mistake or a clever idea to do this. Normally using the masking fluid for the lighter details goes really well, but I've not ever used it this extensively in a foliage situation, so we're playing around a little bit here. I think what I'm going to choose to do is just really go dark. I want to go completely over this so that the area around it helps it pop. And I want to fade it out a little bit here. So just do some, allude to some of this darker values, but not get as dark as I am here. And this is the area that's going to have the darkest darks to contrast with these lights. And we'll do some hatching. And I think, let's do the erasing now. was fun. I'm not altogether disappointed. All right, so I'm going to go in with my 05 and make it look a little less glaring in some of these. Add some different bits of detail to help them blend together. I don't know what that was. I think this was something like that. And it's okay that they're not all outlined, because some of these, you know, would be more organic. So this is kind of a version of that. And there's different value within each leaf because they're all, you know, facing different directions slightly, so. All right, that's like that. I'll take it. What do you think? And the thing with really intricate details like this is going to be always be more time consuming than something like this, or than something like this, because there's so many different plants and there's so much variety. And what my aim is to just give an impression that there are a lot of different vines doing different things without, you know, drawing every leaf or petal or stem, you know, just trying to show you what's there. Let your brain fill in the blanks. Okay. What do we think? Do we like it? I think it's good. All right, so let me stand up and take a look. Have a piece of candy corn and squint. So this table is a little bit darker, or needs to be, and as do the legs, but not, I think it might not make the legs that much darker. But this part of the table, just a little bit. Okay. Got to put some shading there. And I think maybe some more solid shadows right in here. I mean, that is so dark. You can't see anything there. And that helps everything else pop out. Now this leg back here is quite dark. And it does blend in. I think that's looking more like it. Yeah, I like having used the masking fluid for this cluster. It was really quite helpful, I think, in giving me an impression without having to spend hours and hours. I mean, I know it's been a long time, but trust me, it could have been a lot longer had I not used the masking fluid, because I would have had to be a little bit more precious around some of the lights. It's hard to tell what this is. Again, not that we need to know what it is because we're just looking at values, but it does sort of help. It's a really light value. I have to think about like what I want it to suggest. And I think what I wanted to suggest is, you know, these over here are curtains, like lace curtains, and I'm trying to decide, I think those are lace curtains too. I'm excited now. I'm pleased with this one so far. I think what I want to do is, now that I have all of that masking fluid removed, I'm going to do a big sweep. AJ, 2 hours. I know, AJ, it's been crazy. But look what we've accomplished. This was a lot of detail. And 2 hours when you have a talking teacher. I guess that's what you can expect. Okay, so I'm going to do a sweep and try to remove all the last bit of graphite. I'm liking it. Javier, looks amazing. Thank you. I'm really pretty pleased. I think this might be one of my favorite ones. I thought I wouldn't like it, but touch wood, I'm liking it so far. Let's hope I don't. Let's hope I do these last few bits justice. So I want to now put in kind of some suggestion. These are lace, but they're you can see they're a very light value, but it's not pure white. So using a very light touch with my lightest pen, I just want to stipple out a little bit. Ugh. I won't do too much. And I like that. And again here. And we do have a little jar. Some darkness behind it, and then this little curtain that's just peeking open around it. Scallops down, just like that. And then we have a plank of wood here. Okay. And I don't think even though that's a, that's a kind of a mid to dark gray, this door, but I want to preserve that for color later because it's such a pretty color. So I think it looks balanced enough to keep it that. I think we're in the home stretch, folks. What I'm doing at this point, at the end, is I'm just looking for where I need to add those last bits of darks without going overboard or outlining or anything. Just like, where have I missed opportunities to make things pop a little bit more? I think here's one area. And this has, let's zoom in on that. There's like a little mini blind, or there's a blind of some sort. Some of these are darker than others. That one's darker, that one's darker. this around the side is darker. But just a little. And then I don't want to do it quite as dark as it is. I just want to give an illusion to the fact that there's, you know, life inside. It's not stagnant. And there's some shadows from the vines. Can you see that? Actually, they're all quite dark in their way. I think that's good. I don't want to gild the lily on that one. I think I'm gonna call it a day. I think I'm pleased with that. Let me take one last look back. Let's see what I need. I think final definition, this needs to be like that. And again, these are probably a little bit too light, but I really want to preserve the whiteness of that for a pop of red when I come in with color later. Okay. Actually, this is darker. Can you see that? You've got some, you know, you've got all this shading. And this, even though this bit is darker in the picture, I want the atmospheric perspective to just sort of keep that in the background. So I'm pleased with that area. Again, the star of the show is here. This is just framing. This is framing, this is framing. This is the area that I wanted to be the most crisp. Some more shading in here. I don't wanna overdo it, but I do. Let's put just a little bit more in here. That's good, that's a bit more realistic. And probably a little tiny bit more in just this section. I think that's good. What do you think? Would you live here? Would you live in a Hobbit house? That could be kind of cozy, especially in winter. And just doing a last little eyes going all around the page. I'm also looking at the screen that I handily have right next to me. And comparing it, and I think it's good. I'm pleased. Are you guys pleased? What do you think? All right. Well, thanks for joining me. Thanks for sticking it out, if anyone did, and coming back for those of you who went for a dinner break or a tea break or just a break. And I will be back on Sunday. We'll be doing watercolor on one of these probably from one of the early live streams. But have a beautiful rest of your day or your night, and thanks for joining me. I'll see you soon. Bye.